Top reasons why you face disappointments in your marriage. Hi friends, welcome to Marriage Realities, a comprehensive relationship channel. Today's video is all about the many disappointments you have about your married life. This is not the married life I expected. I had great dreams about my spouse, but every dream I had about him or her has been shattered. My spouse has changed so much after marriage that he or she seems to be a stranger to me. Many of my friends have this complaint about their spouse. Like my friends, many of you might feel disappointed with your marriage. And the disappointments you have about your spouse makes you feel very unhappy about your married life. You're absolutely wrong in feeling disappointed about your spouse. You only feel disappointed with your spouse when you have too many expectations about him or her. And naturally, you feel disappointed with your spouse when none of your expectations happens. And in your disappointment, you also presume that your spouse has changed for the worst. But you would be surprised to know that your spouse also has identical disappointments about you. Yes, your spouse is also very disappointed with you after marriage. What could be the real reasons behind the utter disappointments both feel about each other? Who's the culprit behind the stalemate? Is it you or your spouse? I'm sure both will point accusing fingers at each other. But you're not the culprit behind the disappointments in your married life, and neither is your spouse. The real culprit behind your disappointment is your great expectations about your married life. It is a fact that you have great dreams about your spouse before your marriage. You expect your spouse to always be cheerful and humorous. You do not understand that it is not quite possible. You expect that your spouse will display his or her love for you 24/7, but this becomes your topmost disappointment as your spouse scarcely displays his or her love for you openly and frankly. You also dream that your spouse will be spending tons of quality time with you. But you're disappointed when your spouse spends his or her time doing his or her own thing without spending it with you. You also dream that your relationship would be thriving with unconditional emotional support from your spouse. But many a time you only experience emotional neglect meted out to you by your spouse. You also dreamed that your married life would be full of transparency and frankness. But you're taken aback when your spouse keeps you in the dark about his or her activities. Can you see how you face utter disappointments in your married life when one expectations after another come tumbling to dust? You now realize that the expectations were dreamy, unrealistic, and unachievable. Does this mean you should not have any dreams about your married life and your spouse? This is quite impossible, isn't it? When you love your spouse ardently, it's very natural to have certain anticipations and expectations about him or her. Then where does your expectations and anticipations go wrong? The worst blunder you make is you build your dreams about your spouse according to your inclinations, whims, and desires. You wrongly assume that your spouse would always act according to your wishes. You feel that your spouse would forever behave in a way you like. You also have tons of dreams that your spouse would change according to your anticipations. You fail to understand that your spouse can never be a replica of your dreams. Your spouse is an individual and so is bound to have his or her own unique traits. Your spouse will never robotically act according to your desires and aspirations. Unless you put a break to your expectations, your marriage cannot survive. And unless you accept your spouse for what he or she is, your married life will flop miserably. Having expectations based on your love days is the biggest mistake you make. Your love days are always carefree and fun-loving. It is only after your marriage you realize that you're entering into a different world. It is very contrary to the world you dreamed of. You find that your married life is a world full of responsibilities and commitments. Fulfilling responsibilities definitely brings in a radical change in the way you interact with your spouse. Both become serious and focused on fulfilling your duties. There are times when both feel overwhelmed by the plethora of duties you have to fulfill. So both feel strange and pressurized by the pile-up of responsibilities in a relationship. The love both have towards each other in no way lessens. But the altered responsible situation your married life transfers into makes the way your spouse interacts with you undergo a drastic change. A change that makes you feel unhappy that your spouse has lost his or her intense love for you. Now, everything about your married life slips to the routine and the boredom. Gradually, you feel utterly disappointed with your relationship. When in love, you did not have to demand the attention of your spouse. You got it spontaneously and instantly. But after marriage, your spouse does not pay that much of attention on you. You're bewildered at the increasingly indifferent behavior your spouse displays towards you. It makes you feel that the love your spouse had for you is slowly fading away. No. Your way of looking at your marriage is basically wrong. You want everything to happen according to your expectations. When your expectations are too sky high, it is well nigh impossible for your spouse to fulfill all the dreams you have about him or her. You're taken aback that none of your expectations come true in your married life. You expected to enjoy great social status after your marriage. You're disappointed when you struggle to make both ends meet. You thought your spouse would buy all the showy things the world has to offer. You dreamt of great standard of living after your marriage. But you feel disappointed when you have to live a mediocre life of the middle class. You had dreams that your spouse would change according to your expectations, but you're invariably disappointed. You had rosy dreams that your spouse would spend every minute with you, but you're perpetually disappointed. And when your expectations are not fulfilled, you feel that your marriage is destined to fail. How wrong can you be? Do your colleagues and friends behave in a way you expect? They do not. But you're not at loggerheads with them. In fact, you adjust with them. You tolerate them. You coexist in peace with them. Why is it so? It is because you do not have any dreams about them. You also do not have any expectations about them. You accept them as they are. This is what you should do with your spouse also. The success of your marriage literally depends upon the way you accept your spouse as he or she is. Do not make much ado about the minor differences of opinion you have with your spouse. Do not thrust your ideas and thoughts on your spouse. Accept the fact that your spouse is an individual and so prone to be different from you. Do not feel disappointed with your spouse just because he or she is not what you thought him or her to be. Crash expectations are common in almost all marriages. The disappointment you feel about your unrealized expectations should be thrown away if you want to enjoy your married life. When you're rational, you will realize that your love days were days of unrealistic dreams, and that it is the love after your marriage which is very real and factual. And so, your love after marriage is more genuine. Did this video make you understand that the disappointments you feel is because of your belied expectations? Marriage Realities will have many such relationship eye-openers. Subscribe to my channel to understand your marriage in a new light. Press the bell icon for updates about my latest relationship videos. Make love forever until death do us part your relationship goal.